Well, welcome everyone to another episode of Sales Pipeline Radio. Very excited to have y'all here. Thank you so much for joining us in the on-demand version here on the podcast. Very excited to have with us today special guest Steven Rosen. He's an executive coach, sales management expert, and the president and founder of Star Results. Steven, thanks so much for joining us today.
Matt, I'm glad to be here and always look forward to speaking with you. It's always fun and interesting for me.
Well, likewise. I mean, I always learn a ton just listening to you and having you, hearing you talk at conferences, see you speak at industry conferences quite a bit, and it's always learn a ton. So, I think there's so much we could cover here as we're recording this sort of beginning of 2019. A lot of companies having their sales kickoffs right around now and sort of preparing for the new year. If for those people listening that may not have the advantage of having a sales kickoff for themselves or their team, what can people do on their own in a disciplined way to prepare for the new year? What are some of your best tips to help people ensure that they're having a successful sales year?
It's a great question. And to me, for whether you're I work with a lot of sales executives, but it doesn't matter what level you're at. For me, it's always about figuring out your 2 or 3 key success factors, identifying them, and finding the way how you're going to achieve each one, and creating a measurement in place. That's my approach to sales execution, which we all know that companies are great at making marketing plans, and where most things fail is on the execution. And I really think it's because we try to do too much. For me, it's what are the 3 key things that you need to do to be successful, and doing those extremely well.
So less is more a little bit, right? Just in terms of...
Yes. When we try to do too much, guess what? We don't do anything well. They say a jack of all trades, a master of none. And I think companies, individuals, we're all trying to do too much, and we lose focus on what is critical.
How much do sales reps need to be sort of self-disciplined relative to that versus relying on a manager or a leadership team to tell them where to go? I mean, ideally, you work in a scenario where, you've got a leadership team helping you be focused, giving you resources to sell. But at the end of the day, no one else is earning your paycheck but you or your commission check. So, how much can sales reps rely on themselves to be that source of discipline?
It's interesting because my belief is that sales is a discipline. And, people think, oh my God, I'm going to sales. There's no structure, there's no process. And in fact, it's completely opposite. The people who are most successful have figured out a process. So I think when it comes down to direction, I think senior leadership, as companies, Fortune 500 companies build very strong marketing plans. They're very good at that. Sales leadership, I'm not sure what percentage do execution plans, but I think they can provide direction as to what's critical and say, hey, we're going to measure this. And when you get down to the individual contributor, I think where your latitude comes in is deciding which are the key customers. And how am I going to get those customers to come on board to achieve my objectives? So I think there's decisions at all levels, and the discipline from a sales rep perspective is really focusing in on which clients are going to make a difference and having a clear path to getting there or closing the sale or making more sales with that client.
Got it. We got a special episode of Sales Pipeline Radio today with Steven Rosen, who is the founder of Star Results, but also the author of a new sales coaching program. And I want to talk a little bit about that. And let's talk about sales coaching in general before we get into the program. I think a lot of people that are in sales management don't do enough coaching, and sometimes maybe think they don't have time to do it and don't really see how important it is. Talk about the importance of coaching, especially at the beginning of the year as you're trying to get people on track.
Okay. Well, I'd say there's a lot there. One, the importance of coaching as a sales manager. If you look at your critical success factors, the number one sales management activity that drives sales performance is coaching. And of course, coaching is a challenging skill, and not all sales managers are true leaders, where a true leader actually helps the reps grow and coach, and that is a form of leadership style. Not getting out enough. If you look at sort of what I look at as the 3 pillars for success as a sales coach, one is effectiveness, so knowing how to coach. and being very good at helping people grow and develop. Number two is how much time you spend. So time, to me, if that's your critical success factor, then as Stephen Covey said, make sure you put your big rocks in before all the little minutia that gets put in. And the last component in those pillars is actually following a methodology. Just like sales, any sales rep who follows a sales process will do better than ones who don't.
And there's a difference between sales coaching and sales management that I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand or even recognize. Talk a little bit about that difference and why it's important.
Yeah. Well, I mean, management is we look at, I separate, management as performance management, managing numbers, KPIs and what have you. And there's a management component to that, which is more administrative. When you're talking about coaching, coaching is a very different skill set. And it's really about helping people grow and improve. And it requires a different mindset than looking at the numbers. It requires a manager to be non-judgmental, because people won't be open to coaching if you're constantly judging their performance. So it really requires a whole different mindset. It's really about moving from telling people what to do, which is more directive and more management oriented, to asking and helping people think through and actually helping them think. Because in most cases, most people don't want to think. They want their manager to give them the answer. And that is more management, where coaching is allowing people to develop, to learn, and to grow.
And there aren't really, I mean, I think most organizations have sales training that's really for the sales reps, but not as much on the sales coaching side. And I assume that that's a large part of where your program has come from. Talk about the state of sales coaching in organizations today, and why it's so important for organizations to use workshops like your own to help improve where people are.
Well, I mean, if you look at the data is very scary. Actually, let me pull up a good reference here so I can actually quote the right numbers. But on the positive side, highly effective coaching, coaches are more effective versus less effective, has a 19% impact on performance. Yet, according to my good buddy Dave Curlin, only 7% of sales managers are effectively coaching. That's less than 1 in 10 are actually doing what they need to do to be an effective coach. So one of my pillars was effective coaching. The other was frequency of coaching. So one guideline I published, or I made a comment on LinkedIn, is if you can aim for 1 day per rep per month, you're doing a pretty good job. And yet only 14% of sales managers are spending adequate time coaching their salespeople. As much as, although you'll ask them, you say, hey, are you good at coaching? Are you out coaching? Most answers will be yes. The third pillar, in terms of following a coaching methodology, and the CSO Insights found that companies who have a formal coaching process close 17% more sales. Yet, based on my own research, we did a research in terms of how many companies have a formal coaching process that's used and understood, and it's less than 50%. So you can see where the dilemma is. The upsides are there, yet it's just not happening. So what I've decided, and I've been talking about this, Matt, and you've known me for a number of years, but probably for the last 10 years, I've been talking about this dilemma. And as we kicked off last year, there was a wonderful study which showed that sales leaders, sales executives, their number one concern was the quality of coaching, or the number one obstacle to achieving their sales numbers was suboptimal coaching. So everyone understands it. Everyone understands the upsides, but I don't think people are doing, or organizations are doing enough to solve the issue. And so I know I've made it my mission this year to really help thousands of sales managers become great sales coaches. And hence, I developed a program which takes the same program I've done for Fortune 500 companies and puts it on an online module that you can learn on demand at your leisure. You can go back, look at each of the components, and really learn how to effectively coach.
And it's more than just what needs to be coached, but I think what makes this interesting for what you're doing is how you deliver coaching, and how that coaching reinforces behavior. Talk a little more about the details of the program you put together, and
Yeah.
and
Okay.
how and how
So,
the approach matters so much.
well, the approach to coaching, we start off in the most important component, and the center of all that we do is what I call a coaching mindset. And what a coaching mindset is asking instead of telling, and it's asking effective questions. So as you go through the steps, and we have 4 steps of the program, being in a coaching mindset is really key. And many of us, like I'm doing right now, immediately go into tell mode with their salespeople as opposed to asking. And you've done a good job asking questions. And then we take them through a 4 step process. Um, in detail. We have them evaluate themselves, because if you're not there with them the other 19 days, you want them self-evaluating. You talked about self-discipline earlier on in the interview. We want salespeople who are aware of themselves, can actually coach themselves. Why we call it focused coaching is because as humans, it's very hard to change in general. Let's say we need to lose weight. There's a number of behaviors that we have to change, whether it be exercise, eating, and to do too many of them, or golf is probably even the best example. When I was in industry, my company did a lot of golfing and I was lousy. And then of course I'd go for lessons and practice, stance and grip and whatever. And then I'd get out there and there'd be too many things to think about. So our approach is focusing on 1 or 2 things. And as a coach, if you can help a sales rep improve in 1 or 2 areas in terms of their competencies from a 2 to a 5 in the course of a year, then you're doing a great job. And really the key, there's 2 other key components. One is having the rep develop their own development plan, not the manager. The manager or coach facilitates that. And really where the power of coaching is making a commitment to your coach, and the coach providing ongoing follow-up. I call it closing the accountability loop. Um,
As a coach,
so, I mean, go ahead.
well, just curious, as a coach, as well as sort of as a sales rep, like what do you have to do to really drive a behavior change that you want, right? I mean, like listening to a coaching program and learning what you should do is one thing. Actually, driving behavior change is a whole nother animal. Where do you see companies, best able to do that?
Well, one, it's interesting. So, in order to change rep behavior, we need to change manager behavior, because most managers are not disciplined in how they go and coach their salespeople. And I call that sort of flavor of the day coaching, where today you got to work on your closing skills, and the next time I'm out with you, you got to work on your probing skills. So, a discipline, a company that has the right cadence in place. So it's not just teaching the managers how to coach, it's how to create a system of coaching or a coaching culture, which involves following a methodology. The next level of leadership, actually taking accountability to following up with their managers. So the next level senior managers following up with each of their managers on having coaching plans, on writing coaching reports. And I guess the key to behavior change is ongoing reinforcement. And that's sort of where the problem in many cases where training falls down is you've learned how to do something. It doesn't mean you've mastered the skill. So what coaching does, it's an ongoing process to help someone master a specific skill, behavior, competency, and it requires ongoing reinforcement, a number of visits. It's very much like selling, where you talk about having to visit a client, 6, 7, 8 times to move the sale forward. Changing behavior is a very similar process. It requires ongoing focus on that specific area. So if you're trying to do too much, you end up doing nothing. Less is more when it comes to coaching. So changing behavior requires a commitment from the individual. Hey, I want to change, because if you don't have that, then you're not going anywhere. 2, a plan on how I'm going to change. And then the power of coaching is ongoing reinforcement and good questioning to help the individual move along the spectrum of improving their competencies from a 2 to a 3, from a 3 to a 4, etc.
One thing I don't think we see as much in coaching is we talk about skills, you talk about just resilience. What part does culture play in making all of this work? If I'm a sales rep trying to sort of be more successful, I'm a manager trying to affect change and help my reps feel comfortable with, maybe a dynamic sales environment. How much is there coaching worth doing relative to culture change and managing culture in an organization?
That's a great question. I have to think about that one a little bit, but to me, there's a couple key pillars in organizations, and if you have a rotten culture, um, it creates the wrong environment for coaching and for leadership. So, culture in a sales organization is just so critical to so many things about how people feel about the organization, how much incremental effort you get out of people, and how you value people. So, if you look at building blocks, culture is a to me is a foundational piece. And then there's leadership, and then within leadership, you can kind of include coaching in there, or you can make it a next level. But those are two foundational pieces that I'm working with organizations that I've seen go through major change and going from a real performance culture to what I call a rotten culture, where people aren't valued and people aren't given the latitude and empowerment. And leaders in that environment, mid-level leaders, even senior leaders, are leaving because it's just not the right culture. So, to me, culture is it's not a nice to have. It's a foundational piece to sales success.
Absolutely. Well, I know we wanted to talk mostly about leadership today, but you are a prolific content producer. You've got a number of great books. One of them is the Sales Manager's Success Guide, 52 sales management tips. Talk a little more about sort of the broader set of sales management, sales coaching tools you have available and where people can find them.
Okay. Well, within the course, actually, we've embedded all our key tools. But in terms of helping managers succeed, certainly we help managers become great coaches, and we use training and coaching to do that. We have a proprietary assessment, which is a great tool for any sales manager who wants to know how effective they are as a coach. And it's a 180-degree survey that the sales reps who receive the coaching fill out, as well as the manager, so they can find out how good or how effective they are as a coach, find areas for improvement, areas of strength. We also help sales managers hire effectively and provide consulting as well as profiles to be able to identify top performers. Of course, my book, 52 Sales Management Tips, I joke there's some simple tips that that I've learned over the years and share with my clients. I captured those in a short book format, and of course, tools. My blog, the Sales Management blog, provides a number of, I think, insightful thoughts on sales management. Again, my belief, Matt, is that it's not rocket science, but you would hit on one of my favorite words, the discipline of sales management. It is a discipline, and I don't think too many sales people coming out of sales look necessarily as a discipline. And if you can provide more rigor as well as more people orientation, you're gonna crush your sales numbers.
I agree. Well, where can people learn more from you, Stephen, if they're interested in learning more about the coaching package or just getting more of your content? Where should we send people?
The best place to go is to www. My company's name follows the same initials as mine, Stephen Rosen. The company is Star Results. So it's www.starresults.com, and you've got links to get you to my corporate programs, my individual manager programs, and my blog and videos where I share some of my thoughts in the area of sales management.
Well, thanks very much. I want to thank our guest today, Stephen Rosen. Definitely check him out. Learn more about his sales management, best practices and recommendations, as well as check out his new sales coaching program available now. Thanks very much for joining us for another episode of Sales Pipeline Radio. We will see you next time.